weather. Where is El Nino? Let's ask the geoengineers. Why has it not developed as we were told it would? The largest El Nino ever. Why has it not developed? And even though Redding has had, in the valley, has had close to its normal rainfall, we are not getting the normal exponential increases of rain in the mountain areas. It's not happening. Why is it not happening? Because of the level of particulates in the atmosphere. That changes the orographic enhancement effect, the effect of the mountains. So again, it's imperative that people study the climate engineering issue and understand its ramifications. More on that in a moment. The dirty, dingy, wispy climate engineering particulate haze stripes, solar radiation management cloud cover continues to be plastered in our skies on most days over Northern California and elsewhere around the globe. I hear from people all over the globe about this every single day. Constant respiratory problems that are now epidemic. Is there any connection between this and the growing epidemic rates of other human diseases that are proven to be connected to highly toxic heavy metal exposure? Lab tests from around the globe have long since proven a mountain of heavy metals like aluminum, barium, and strontium are raining down on all of us. These metals are the primary elements named in climate engineering patents. Yes, this is connected to the dirty, dingy, often checkerboard striped toxic mess that we see in our skies day in and day out. If you don't believe it, it doesn't matter. You're still breathing this contamination with every breath, and it's building up in your body. Several dozen lab tests from Shasta and Siskiyou counties alone, about 70 I believe, prove this beyond any shadow of a doubt. Why aren't we being told? Why don't meteorologists and institutions like the Weather Channel say a word about climate engineering? Because they're owned by corporations like Blackstone and Bain Capital, corporations all connected to the umbilical of the global power structure. Does anyone believe the paid actors at the Weather Channel would tell the truth about climate engineering, knowing their jobs, or perhaps much more, depend on them saying whatever they're told to say? Perhaps we could ask Weather Channel meteorologist Nicholas Wiltgen. Unfortunately, though, we can't, because he died last month in what Fox News said was, quote, an apparent suicide. His car was crashed through an Atlanta parking garage and plowed into an adjacent hotel. That's a strange way to commit suicide. But perhaps let's ask the meteorologists at the National Weather Service or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. But no again, because virtually all the National Weather Service and NOAA government employees are still under a federal gag order. Don't believe me, please. Investigate it for yourself. If you're willing to look at the truth, if you want to see meteorologists going to unimaginable lengths of lying to try and explain away the completely unprecedented and completely engineered weather scenarios that are now the norm, watch the Weather Channel for a while. Connect the dots. Watch the behavior of the Weather Channel actors as they give truly an ever more complex and implausible fabricated explanation for weather scenarios that are historically unprecedented and meteorologically impossible without the climate engineering factor. Again, we have engineered snowstorms happening in the west with the center of those storms, like one I mentioned last week, Winter Storm, quote, Ca, the center of the low pressure of a, quote, winter storm pushing 80 degrees with tornadoes on the, quote, warm side of the storm. Where is our sense of reason? This is not normal. We have massive temperature whiplash fluctuations from 50, 60 degrees in a single day. This is extremely devastating to the biosphere, and this can't happen naturally. It's from chemical ice nucleation related to weather modification. Please look it up. Look up every term I state. You'll find lots of data if you choose to look. As the public wakes up to the climate engineering nightmare, the crimes of climate engineering, I believe they'll hold accountable as accomplices all those who have lied to hide the geoengineering insanity. Perhaps trials like those held in Nuremberg are coming, one would hope. If you still refuse to believe weather warfare is going on over your head every single day, stand by. As I said before, you'll believe it soon enough. Well, our corporate-controlled media be allowed to black out issues of critical importance, it will come down to this. It's up to us, the citizens of Northern California and elsewhere, to picket in the parking lots until the people at institutions like KRCR and the Record Searchlight, our local newspaper, decide to stop blacking out critical stories and start telling the truth. Again, the weathermen at KRCR, to the weathermen, if you can't talk about the climate engineering issue, tell us. If that's not the case, why would you continue to avoid addressing this issue in any way, shape, or form, no matter how high the community concern grows? We would simply like to know, for example, how you know that the skies will be mostly sunny days in advance, and on such days the only thing in the sky blocking the sun is what's coming out of the back of a jet aircraft passing overhead. How can a meteorologist predict jet-sprayed haze blocking the sun days in advance, unless they're in fact reading from a script, perhaps by the National Weather Service or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration? Both of these government organizations have all their weather predictions modeling done by Raytheon, a massive private defense contractor for our government that's neck deep in climate engineering patents. Are our meteorologists simply reading scripts? Why won't they address public concerns? Our situation is far worse than any official agency has stated. Far, far worse, and getting worse by the day. But when you look at frontline data, frontline film footage of eroding shorelines with villages toppling into the sea and ice disappearing, you don't need to believe any official agency. You need to believe your own eyes, and too few people are willing to do that now. More on that later in this broadcast, but they have disconnected their sense of reason and logic and even their sense of vision to believe the official narrative or their own ideology. And that simply does not help our predicament, and we are all in an unimaginable predicament. If we continue on this course, it will very, very soon be game over for all of us. It's a mathematical fact. Another headline. Scientists say expect more 1,000-year events like the Louisiana flood. Now here we have again our, quote, scientists who won't acknowledge the giant elephant in the room of climate engineering, and yet we're taught to believe those, quote, experts without questioning, just like we're taught to believe the, quote, experts in the medical community who refuse to look at the data, refuse to question the instructions the medical industrial complex has given them in order to ensure their paychecks and pensions. And this is simply a society of cowards at that point, absolute cowards. But the truth will come out. There will be no hiding it, from climate engineering to the massive crimes of the medical industrial complex. The truth will come out. So, on the 1,000-year floods, with geoengineering covering the planet, affecting the climate system. And I'm not saying we wouldn't have those floods without geoengineering, because the damage done to the climate system now is so horrific, and a warmer atmosphere carries more moisture. We will absolutely have immense flooding if and when climate engineering is brought to a stop. But that's the planet trying to cool itself. Hurricanes are still being suppressed in the Atlantic Basin. Does anybody wonder why nothing spins up in the Gulf of Mexico in spite of unimaginably hot temperatures? Louisiana was used for a moisture pump, by the way, to try to help cool some of the eastern and central U.S. So that moisture was allowed to be pumped into the atmosphere, pushed north, and ice nucleated to try to cool down some of the areas that are still superheating. So Louisiana, in many senses, was a climate sacrifice zone that just occurred. And you can separate nothing from climate engineering at this point, nothing, because the whole system is tainted. We can't consider any weather event natural at this point. We can't. 70 years of geoengineering, climate engineering, this historical fact, proven by Senate documents, presidential reports, all of which are on geoengineeringwatch.org. For those who care, look, because your future and your children's future depends on us exposing and stopping climate engineering, and a lot of other issues that need to be addressed after that. But climate engineering must be our first and top priority. Another headline: wildfire burns with ferocity never seen by fire crews. From that report, a wildfire with a ferocity never seen before by veteran California firefighters raced up and down canyon hillsides, instantly engulfing homes and forcing thousands of people to flee, some running for their lives just ahead of the flames. This area burnt my home region where I'm from, in Oak Hills, California. And I've seen that terrain change. It was changing even before I moved away some 18 years ago now, something like that. It was changing rapidly because the entire planet's changing, and helping to fuel that change is the deliberate climate intervention programs that are going on. The pharmaceutical approach to planet Earth for the power structure to try to hide the severity of climate damage from the population for as long as possible by using weather as a weapon, which is historical fact, by the way, has radically worsened an already bad climate situation. Another headline, record heat in U.S. Northwest, Southwest Oregon to shatter records at 110 degrees. It's hot everywhere, with few exceptions where there's enough moisture to chemically nucleate and cool things down. So when those in power can make it snow over the pyramids, or can kill 30 or 40,000 alpacas in South America with chemically nucleated snow and ice storms, many people see those headlines and convince themselves, as the quote I read in the beginning of this broadcast states, they convince themselves nothing's wrong. Big mistake. Look at the facts. Another headline, China endures worst heat wave in 140 years. It's from USA Today, by the way. And that heat wave is still enduring. It's been enduring for several weeks. No end in sight. We don't hear about that here, do we? Another headline, Japan breaks national heat record. From that report, Japan breaks national heat record. An all-time national heat record was set in Japan on August 12th. Now, these records continue to fall all over the globe. This is not a linear equation. It's a runaway event right now. If there's not a complete change of direction, very soon, people won't be worried about how much gold or silver they have or what kind of new car they're driving. They'll be worried about their next drink of water and their next bite of food as society collapses. A very delicately balanced global society, as soon as the links start falling out of the chain will completely implode. It will come very quickly and violently. So we see it happening already in countries around the globe. Chaos is ensuing. With the weather, and again, I focus on the weather a lot because I feel mathematically, rationally, if all the data is examined, the greatest threat to each and every one of us, short of nuclear cataclysm, which we have happening now as well, is climate engineering, because you can't escape it. You can't walk out your door and take a breath without inhaling what the climate engineers are spraying. So yes, we face a lot of threats, but nothing can match that threat that's systematically decimating the entire web of life. How long can you hold your breath? So yes, the climate engineers continue to wreak havoc around the globe. The weather whiplash will continue as the U.S. and around the globe, the climate engineering programs are ramped up to ever larger levels. We're going to see radical temperature swings that will continue. These radically warm temperatures to a very short, brief, intense cool-off as they chemically ice nucleate material going further into winter. I'll talk about that more later as well. And we see the really immense amount of anthropogenic damage to the planet. A lot of people I know don't want to believe that. A lot of people want to believe that it's okay to loot, plunder, and pillage the planet forever and nothing will ever go wrong. That's not reality. It's simply not reality. And the greatest form of damage, the greatest single form, the most glaring red flag of human assault against the planet ever launched, mathematically, is climate engineering, if we look at all the angles of decimation caused by that.
What we are seeing is man-made, but man-made in a different way than you may guess. Weather modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, done by the United States government, done by states across the United States, are underway. There's more than 50 of them in operation across the United States. All of these impact agriculture because they change the microclimates needed for agriculture to survive. None of these programs that I know of today, and this is all public record, are available at any time with oversight, agricultural oversight or public oversight. These programs impact agriculture, and there are programs around the world, international corporations, are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so that what happens is that we are putting chemicals, ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air, or chemicals coming from airplanes that change and modify our weather. So one of the things that I'm concerned about and that we need to address in the future is how these programs are impacting microclimates needed for our crops to survive and needed for pollination. If we change the growing season, the pollinators may not survive, and also our crops, our flowers, and our tree crops may not get the pollination needed. So one of my areas is looking at this situation to see if we can begin to put under control experimental and other types of weather modification programs. The other issue is that a lot of times we're talking about mitigation for climate change. It's rather an undefined term at this period of time. And so what happens is that many times we're talking about artificially putting chemicals like sulfur or particulates into the atmosphere in what they call geoengineering schemes to reduce and help the planet, supposedly, but help the planet to not go through such a tremendous global climate change and to mitigate global warming. However, the incidence of putting chemicals into our atmosphere is going to change and impact agricultural crop production. And if you take and you put up into our skies chemicals to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth, you are going to begin to reduce crop production. Studies at the University of Illinois on corn crop production show reductions. Without the process of photosynthesis, whereby plants from direct sunlight gain the energy to grow, to produce crops, we are going to find ourselves, if we mitigate in that direction, impacting the crop production not only here in the United States, but worldwide. One of the things that is impacting crop production right now in the United States and reducing photosynthesis and also impacting the ability of solar power panels to generate the type of power that they should is persistent jet contrails. NASA talks about persistent jet contrails as exacerbating global warming because they trap warmth in the atmosphere when they produce cirrus and man-made clouds. NASA also talks about that these aircraft leaving persistent contrails are changing our climate. And when they change our climate to the degree that one jet can leave a persistent jet contrail which will spread across our skies from what this picture up here on my left on the screen looks like, which is a trail left by a jet, that trail can expand to 4,000 kilometers and last for 20 hours. This was unheard of in the early 60s and the 70s, and it wasn't until the late 1980s that there was a change and we started to have persistent jet contrails that persist.